Today, we're going to talk about, we're not going to talk about anything. I'm going to talk about how long does it take to build a coaching business? Because there is a lot of nonsense talked about how long it takes. Or is it nonsense that's talked, or is it just a lack of understanding? I think it might be a bit of both. So there's all kinds of things tied up with this. ROI, length of time it takes to build a business, kind of availability of what's out there. Let's start by looking at why we end up with this weird sense of how long it's going to take to build a business, because the answer is it takes an awful lot longer than we imagine. So I get probably 5 or 6 DMs a week, and on a bad week, I get 2 or 3 a day of people offering to help me find clients as a coach. Yeah. And some of them say to me, if you want to earn 6 figures in 90 days, then you need to talk to me. And the truth is, it's not possible to build a coaching business from scratch to 6 figures in 90 days. If it was possible, then we'd all have one, wouldn't we? Because we would borrow the tens of thousands of dollars or pounds that these people want to charge us. We'd stick it on our mortgage, and in 90 days, we could pay it back, couldn't we? I mean, crikey, at that rate, we could pay our mortgage off in a year. My point is, if it was possible to build a coaching business in 90 days, we'd all have one. I run my Nail Your Niche challenge 3 times a year. And the conversation that kind of brings the biggest shock response is when I say it's going to take you at least 12 months to get yourself an ROI on the money you've spent on your coaching business and the money you spend with the Coaching Revolution learning how to market. It's going to take you 2 years to replace a full-time income. And if you're looking for the kind of coaching business that has associates delivering the work, that's a 5-year plan. We have coaches that have done all of those things, Coaching Revolution coaches who have done all of those things. The 2 years to replace a full-time income, that's an average. It takes some people longer than that. And obviously it takes some people shorter than that. We have had coaches who in their very first month of kind of starting to become visible have had inquiries that have turned into clients, and they've repaid what they spent with us in the first month. That is incredibly unusual. It takes time. And I've had a conversation, it was just the one conversation, but it was quite shocking. I spoke to someone who said to me, right, it's the first Monday of the month. I had my last day at work on Friday last week. I've got no savings and my mortgage payment's due out at the end of the month. What have you got? And I was taken aback. People who quit their day job to start building a coaching business, unless they have another source of income, or they whatever. So as long as they're not relying on their coaching income, then giving up work is a choice. This guy had given up work to, and I quote, put a bit of pressure on himself. And that's quite shocking. What he wanted was kind of to take his safety net away so that he'd take action. And I was like, I can't help you with that. You won't have a marketing message written in 4 weeks. It takes longer than that to do the research, to kind of get your head around what it is you need to be doing. This is a process. This is not an event. Marketing isn't an event that you do once and then sit back and wait. Like, I know coaches who set up online CV style websites and then sit back and wait for their inquiries and struggle like mad when that doesn't happen. So why has this 6 figures in 90 days stuff come from, and this idea of frankly fantastic wealth in a very, very short period of time with very little effort? If it sounds too good to be true, then it is. The only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. it's hard work building a coaching business. Is it worth it? By goodness, yes, it's worth it. I was going to swear then. Yes, it's worth it. It's incredibly worth it. It's the most, I think, the most valuable skill you can have is to be able to generate your own income, because as soon as you can generate your own income, you are no longer dependent on other people to live. And I just think having your own business is the most fantastic thing in the world. But the transition from employment to having your own business is a lot more complicated than we think it is. And I'm saying this based on 8.5 years of working with people who, by the time we sort of get to 6 months in, are going, there's more to this than I thought. And by the time they're a success, they say, number one, I would never have stuck this long enough on my own. I would have assumed I was failing and given up. And number two, this is the biggest personal development journey I've ever taken. I am not the same person now as I was when I joined the coaching revolution. I am now a business owner. I was not a business owner in any way, shape or form when I joined you, not just in terms of not having a business, but in terms of what's going on up here. Because as a business owner, your job is to remain visible and to continue marketing for as long as you want a business. And anybody who tells you anything different isn't being completely honest with you. Now, let's talk about those with monetizable credibility, because they are held up as this is what success looks like. And also, if we know people like that, then we look at them and think, well, it didn't take them 2 years. Why will it take me 2 years? So what I mean by monetizable credibility is, we've got this statistic, this global statistic that says that 82% of coaching businesses will fail in the first 2 years. The reason that they fail isn't that everything was going swimmingly and then at month 23 it all collapses like a Jenga tower, which is what I thought the issue was when I first came across that scenario, that statistic. The truth is they fail because they can't find clients. And 2 years is as long as people can keep going before they run out of time, energy, momentum, money, and just go, the coaching profession's saturated. This doesn't work. And instead of recognizing that they simply don't know how client acquisition works, they don't recognize that. They think they've tried everything possible. And so they give up and they go back to whatever they were doing before. Now, if 82% are failing, then that means 18% are succeeding. And that 18% breaks down into 3 different groups of people. Number one are coaches who are internal coaches. So that's not really a coaching business, but they are successful coaches. Another kind of coach is those who have a coaching business that involves associate coaching. So they're coaching somebody else's clients for a proportion of the fee that the client's paying. And some people do associate coaching for more than one company. If you think of your coaching business as having eggs in a basket, then some of their eggs are associate work. But with the kind of coaches that are in the 18%, all of their work is associate work. No criticism at all. It's just a different way of having a coaching business. And it's also one that was a lot easier to get into before the pandemic, basically. So prior to 2019, 2020. And the other one of the 3 groups, so internal coaches, associate coaches, the other ones are coaches with existing monetizable credibility. So credibility that they built usually within a corporate career, stellar corporate career quite often, and that's taken them decades. So those coaches have people who already know, like, and trust them, who already usually know what our kind of coaching is. Because if you recall, the upper echelons of organizations, or corporate, as I tend to refer to them, even if they're non-profit or public sector, the upper echelons do know what our kind of coaching is. And so this coach with monetizable credibility has a whole little black book full of people who know, like, and trust them, who know what our kind of coaching is, and who are budget holders and in a position to commission coaching. And so that coach opens their little black book and goes and has coffee conversations with those people who already know, like, and trust them, or they send emails out to people who already know, like, and trust them, and they pick up coaching clients or coaching packages, like a whole coaching, 40, 50, 60 grams worth of coaching to be delivered within an organization. Now, those coaches, when I talk to coaches with monetizable credibility, they can get a little bit defensive and say, well, I worked really hard. And I'm not saying that they haven't worked really hard. I accept you've worked really, really hard. However, you started from a position of privilege, which most of us don't have. 82% of us, in fact, don't have. And, that's fantastic. It's fantastic for you. But I think a lot of our professional bodies are made up of people with that monetizable credibility. And so they fail to recognize that the majority of us don't have it. And so the people with monetizable credibility might be able to get to 6 figures in 90 days if they happen to land lucky. But for the rest of us, that's a several year plan. And I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't. And the biggest challenge for us is to keep going when it's quiet, is for us to kind of carrying on when it feels like nothing's happened. We call it shouting into the void, especially when you're doing a lot of online marketing. You're kind of putting things out there and you have very little way of knowing how they're landing. Now, there are some ways of spotting what's going on, but it's really hard. However, the barrier to entry for starting a coaching business is minimal. If we think about starting, let's say, a shop, you'd be 5 years in the red before you were turning a profit. Now, with coaching businesses, once you've paid back the money you've spent on training, training to be a coach and learning how to acquire clients, you're in the black. And you're not paying monthly rent. You don't have massive overheads. You might have a couple of bits of software you need to pay for. We recommend a couple of bits of software that are worth paying for, but many are not. That's a whole other conversation, isn't it? But a couple of inexpensive bits of software and your laptop and an internet connection, and you're good to go. The barrier to entry is tiny compared to any other point in history. What's not tiny is the commitment it takes and how long it takes to keep that commitment going. And that's why the coaching revolution exists in the way that it does. Once upon a time, we taught people what they needed to know and we said good luck. And it became apparent that although people come to us to fill a knowledge gap, teach me how to find clients, they stay and they succeed because we have built what they need into what we sell. So they come, what they want is to fill a knowledge gap, and we do that in spades. But what they need is accountability and support to keep going when it's tough. And it gets tough. Of course it gets tough. So to go back to these 6 figures in 90 days, people, there's another version of it, which is 10 or 20 warm leads a week into your diary. I once had a conversation with somebody who told me that they could either join the coaching revolution and learn how to do this themselves, or they could pay somebody for 3 months to fill their diary with warm leads. And what they decided to do was fill their diary. Now, I went back to them after 3 months and asked how they were getting on. And they said that they were absolutely gutted because they were exhausted because, yes, they'd had, I think it was 20 leads a week in their diary. So this person or people had booked 20 appointments in their diary every week for 12 weeks. That's exhausting on its own. And not a single one of those appointments had any idea why they were there. They had no idea what this coach did. They didn't know anything about coaching, and they had no interest at all in becoming a client. So the box was ticked from the leads person's point of view, but from the coach's point of view, they literally didn't get a single client out of the 3 months of work. And this person said, I wish I'd learned how to do it myself. I wish I'd spent my money on learning how to do it myself, but I thought I was bypassing, shortcutting, basically, the process. There is no shortcut. There is no shortcut. Building a coaching business is a lot of work, and it's far, far more work than most people think it is. What else? If anything that I'm saying, by the way, is making you go, I want to know more about that, drop me a DM on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn and drop me a DM, because I am very happy to make one of these lives about an answer to any of your questions, as well as answering it for you personally in LinkedIn messages. What else can I tell you? Why do we fall for these gurus who say 6 figures in 90 days, or I'm going to fill your diary with warm leads, or pick up one high ticket client? I hate that phrase, high ticket clients. I just hate it. This implication that actually, if you've got a high ticket client, all you need is this many, and life's wonderful. You've still got to learn the client acquisition process. And coaching packages, let's say a package of 10 coaching sessions works out at about £1,500. That's high ticket, isn't it? Isn't coaching just a high ticket item? But you have to be able to sell it. And I've heard of people being told that what they need to do is hang around on LinkedIn, for example, and find posts or comments on posts that suggest that the person that's written them could benefit from coaching, and then oil yourself up and slide into their direct messages to offer them a conversation, like a discovery call, if you like. Now, the problem with that, apparently, if you do that 50 times a week, so you've got to hang around until you find 50 people to message, but if you do that 50 times a week, 5 people will say yes to a sales call, and one of them will become a client a week at high ticket prices. Happy days. The problem with it is that people don't like uninvited direct messages selling them stuff. And so whilst 5 out of 50 might say, yes, they're happy to talk to you, the other 45 will be a lot less happy, and some of them will be downright brassed off and will have no qualms about telling you how uncomfortable they are with you sliding into their DMs. And those kind of conversations on LinkedIn can be very, very challenging. And the mind monkeys that they set up and the feelings that they set up in us will stop us doing anything else. Marketing, learning how to market, how to find clients, is going to be challenging because, number one, it is completely outside of your normal knowledge and skills. And so anything that's new is uncomfortable, isn't it? And challenging until it isn't. But it shouldn't cross any core values. It shouldn't have you feeling so bloody uncomfortable that you just don't want to do it anymore. That's not what this should do. I'm thinking about somebody I know who joined the coaching revolution, who said that her supervisor had got really angry with her when she talked about what she was going to do, because her supervisor said, well, do like I did. I sent out 50 emails, I got 27 clients, and I've never looked back. That supervisor was somebody who was a CPO, Chief People Officer. She had decades of knowledge and experience and decades of building her little black book. And she sent 50 emails to people who already knew, like, and trusted her. And she could not understand why her supervisee couldn't do the same thing. It's back to this, just have good conversations. And it's not fair. Take it from me. Building a coaching business is hard work. Also take it from me. It is incredibly rewarding and it's really good fun.